During my first year of high school, I joined the school choir. I wasn't particularly talented, but it got me out of regular classes, so I didn't complain. The only real downside was staying late for practice, especially before major events. One evening, our usual practice room was occupied, so we were moved to a location near the school's Botanical Garden. Several choir members seemed uneasy about this, including me. The gardens had a reputation. Stories circulated about strange occurrences there, though no two accounts ever matched. I didn't pay much attention to the rumors. I just wanted practice to end. We rehearsed until nearly 9 p.m. By that hour, only 2 exit gates remained open. The college gate on the far side of campus and the track and field gate, which was closer but required walking directly through the Botanical Garden. I chose the shorter route through the garden. The others wished me luck and headed in the opposite direction. I won't pretend the walk wasn't unsettling. Any place becomes menacing in the dark, and the garden was no exception. The path wound through dense foliage that seemed to press in from all sides. To calm my nerves, I pulled out my phone and called my parents to let them know I was ready to get picked up. The call connected after one ring, and I spoke clearly, telling them which gate to meet me at. I didn't hear anything on the other side, so I ended the call and tried again. This time I spoke louder, more insistent. Still no response on the other end. I got frustrated, so I hung up and called a third time. I was nearly shouting now, asking them to just acknowledge that they could hear me. Still, nothing. I gave up and sent a text instead, then continued through the garden. The walk felt longer than it should have. Every shadow seemed to shift at the edge of my vision, but I kept moving. Eventually, I emerged at the gate without any problems. 15 minutes later, my parents arrived, but something was wrong the moment I saw them. They both got out of the car quickly, but their faces looked tight and concerned. My mother looked pale. My dad asked if I was okay and asked me what happened. I stared at them confused and said, "I'm fine. What do you mean?" My mother stepped closer, studying my face. She said they got my calls, all 3 of them. So I said, "Yeah, but you didn't answer. That's why I texted." They both exchanged a look with each other.
"We heard you,"
my dad said.
"The line was open. We heard your voice very clearly."
"Then why didn't you say anything? I kept asking if you could hear me." My mother's hand went to her mouth, and they told me that's not what they heard. The air suddenly felt colder. "What did you hear?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. My father's jaw tightened.
"Every call, the same thing. Your voice saying, 'Help me,' over and over. You sounded terrified."
I'd never said those words, not once. To this day, I don't know who made those calls from my phone or what was walking beside me in that garden, but I know it wasn't me asking for help, and I never took that route again. I was 3 years old when a stranger tried to take me. My older brother was 5, and my mother was pregnant with my youngest brother. This happened in Alabama in the mid-1980s, when children still played outside unsupervised for hours. That's just what people did back then. It was the middle of the afternoon, and my mother was inside doing laundry. My brother and I were playing in the front yard when he decided to go get his big wheel from the backyard. He told me to wait for him, but I was only 3 years old, so the concept of waiting didn't really register with me. I just kept playing in the grass. Then a car pulled up, a Black Sedan. It stopped directly in front of our yard. The driver door opened and a woman leaned out. She had bright red hair and a big smile. She said,
"Hey there, pretty girl.
It sounded foreign, strange.
Would you like some candy? I brought it just for you."
She held out her hand, and I could see the colorful wrappers catching the sunlight. The funny way she talked made me giggle, and I was 3, so I didn't hesitate. I started toddling toward the car. When I reached the door, I put my hand up to take the candy, and in one swift, violent motion, I felt myself being yanked upward. The woman's smile had vanished completely, and her face was cold and expressionless. almost mechanical, as she hauled me toward the car's interior. I started screaming and kicking. My small legs flailed uselessly as she pulled me closer to the darkness inside the vehicle. Then I heard my brother. He'd come back around the house and was screaming for our mother at the top of his lungs. A moment later, my mother's voice cut through everything. She was screaming and running and yelling at the lady to put me down. It wasn't a plea, it was a command, delivered with a fury I'd never heard from her before. The woman released me immediately, and I fell hard onto my back in the grass. The car door slammed shut, tires squealed, and the black sedan tore down the street, disappearing around the corner within seconds. My mother ran to me crying, asking if I was hurt, asking what I was thinking, but I didn't understand any of it. I was just confused about why the lady hadn't given me the candy she promised and why she squeezed me so hard. I was too young to understand what had almost happened. Years later, my mother told me the rest. She'd called the police immediately and filed a report. The description of the woman and the partial license plate number that she managed to see matched an active investigation. Apparently, there was a group operating in our area, and they were connected to a larger network that moved children across international borders. In the months before my attempted abduction, 6 young girls had gone missing from surrounding neighborhoods. None of them were ever found. I think about that sometimes, how if my brother had taken 30 seconds longer to come back around the house, or if my mother had been in the basement instead of near the front windows, I would have been the 7th. I wouldn't have existed past the age of 3. Not as myself, anyway. And my parents would have spent the rest of their lives wondering where I was, if I was still alive, if I ever thought about them, all because I wanted candy from a smiling stranger. This is my best friend's story, but she asked me to share it because she still can't talk about it without her hand shaking. A few years ago, her mother remarried. The new stepdad seemed fine enough, but his brother was a different story. I feel like there's always one questionable uncle in every family, and he was theirs. My friend said he gave her an uneasy feeling from the very first meeting. Nothing she could quite articulate, just an instinct that something wasn't right, but she tried to dismiss it. After all, he was family now. But then the comments started. He'd show up at family gatherings and corner her with invitations that felt off.
The wife and I are heading to our trailer for a week. You should come along. She'll only be there for a couple of days, but you're welcome to stay as long as you'd like.
The words themselves weren't necessarily inappropriate, but the way he said them, the way he held her gaze just a beat too long, made her skin crawl. Then he started bringing her gifts. Small things at first, then more personal items. He'd find excuses to visit her at the tattoo shop that she worked at, despite living an hour away. He always seemed to come by when she was alone, when no other employees were scheduled. The shop had only one door, so she'd be trapped there until closing or until he decided to leave. The hugs were the worst. He would slide his hands too low on her back, and then he'd hold on for too long, pressing just a bit too close. She'd try to pull away politely, but he'd only tighten his grip. When she finally worked up the courage to tell her stepdad what was happening, he dismissed her completely. His brother was just trying to be nice, he said. She was overreacting or misinterpreting kindness. Nothing was done, and the visits continued. 3 years ago, everything got worse. Her mother died suddenly, and it was devastating and unexpected. The kind of loss that leaves you unable to process reality. She was drowning in grief, barely functioning. The memorial service was held at her family home. Relatives filled every room, offering condolences in hushed voices. My friend moved through it all in a daze, not really hearing what anyone said, not really present. The uncle was there, of course. At some point during the service, he found her standing alone in the hallway. He approached her and pulled her into one of his too long embraces. His arms wrapped around her, holding tight. Then he leaned in close and whispered in her ear,
I dream of you.
She pushed him away and went outside and sat on the porch steps. She stayed there for hours, unable to move, unable to speak. unable to process what he just said to her at her own mother's funeral. She never reported it. Who would she tell? Her stepdad had already made it clear whose side he was on, and what would she even say? He hadn't technically done anything illegal, just 4 words, whispered at the worst possible moment. But those 4 words told her everything she already suspected. They confirmed that every uncomfortable moment, every long hug, every inappropriate invitation had meant exactly what she thought it meant. Her step-uncle still comes around for family events. She avoids him when she can, but it's not always possible. And every time she sees him, she hears those words again.
I dream of you.
She knows exactly what kind of dreams he means, and she knows there's nothing she can do about it except stay away, stay vigilant, and never ever let herself be alone with him again. Some monsters don't hide in shadows. Some sit at your family dinner table and call you by name.